There comes a moment in your life when you have to stop asking people to treat you better and start teaching them how to treat you. You cannot keep explaining your heart to people who have already decided to misunderstand you. You cannot keep proving your value to people who benefit from making you feel worthless. And you cannot keep giving unlimited access to people who constantly disturb your peace. Some people only respect the version of you that finally learns how to say no. They respected you when you were available. They respected you when you were silent. They respected you when you tolerated everything. But the moment you establish a boundary, suddenly you're different. Good. You are supposed to be different because God did not bring you this far so that you could spend the rest of your life begging toxic people for approval. There is a stronger version of you waiting to come forward, a version that doesn't argue, a version that doesn't chase, a version that doesn't explain every decision, a version that knows when to walk away. And today I want you to understand something. You don't have to become cruel to become powerful. You don't have to become arrogant to command respect. You simply have to stop abandoning yourself just to keep other people comfortable. My friend, if you have ever dealt with someone who constantly criticized you, manipulated you, disrespected you, drained your energy, or made you question your own worth, then this message is for you. Because toxic people don't always look toxic when they first enter your life. Sometimes they come as friends, sometimes they come as people you trust, sometimes they come as people who smile with you while secretly competing with you. And sometimes they don't even realize how toxic their behavior has become. But eventually you begin to notice the pattern. Every conversation leaves you exhausted. Every interaction makes you question yourself. Every boundary becomes an argument. Every success becomes something they minimize. And every time you try to move forward, somehow they find a way to pull you backward. But hear me today. You are not responsible for keeping everybody comfortable. You are responsible for protecting the life God has given you. God has given you a mind. God has given you purpose. God has given you time. God has given you the ability to make decisions. And you cannot spend all of those gifts trying to convince someone else that you deserve respect. There is a season in your life where you have to stop reacting and start responding. Stop explaining and start deciding. Stop chasing and start becoming. Stop trying to win arguments and start winning your peace. Because when you change the way you carry yourself, people begin to recognize that they can no longer treat you the way they used to. And today we're going to talk about 6 powerful changes that can completely transform the way toxic people see you, and more importantly, the way you see yourself. Stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided to misunderstand you. There is a powerful moment that comes in your life when you realize that not everybody deserves an explanation. You can explain your intentions, your decisions, your struggles, your silence, your choices, and even your heart. And some people will still choose to see you through the lens they created for you. At that point, you have to understand that the problem is no longer your explanation. The problem is their decision not to understand. You have to stop spending your precious energy trying to convince people of something they have already decided not to believe. Think about your daily life. Maybe you decide to stop answering someone's phone calls late at night because every conversation becomes negative. You finally decide, I need peace, I need rest, I need time to focus on myself. But the moment you create that boundary, they ask, why are you acting different? What happened to you? Why don't you talk to me anymore? And what do? You start explaining. You say, I'm not angry with you, I'm just tired, I've been busy, I have a lot going on, I didn't mean anything by it. Then you explain again and again, and somehow after giving them 10 reasons, they still accuse you of being selfish. Listen to me. You don't need 10 reasons to protect your peace. Sometimes I can't do that is enough. Sometimes I need some time for myself is enough. Sometimes silence is enough. You don't have to turn every boundary into a courtroom where you defend yourself against accusations. God has given you the wisdom to recognize when something is no longer healthy for your life. And when you know in your heart that a certain situation is draining you, you don't need everybody to agree with your decision before you make it. There will be people who misunderstand your growth because they benefited from the version of you that had no boundaries. They liked you when you were always available. They liked you when you always said yes. They liked you when you apologized even when you weren't wrong. They liked you when you stayed quiet to keep the peace. But the moment you begin to respect yourself, they may call you arrogant. The moment you begin saying no, they may call you selfish. The moment you stop responding to every insult, they may say you've changed. And you know what? Maybe you have changed. Maybe you're finally becoming the person you were supposed to become. You are not required to remain the same person simply because somebody else was comfortable with your old behavior. Imagine someone who has spent years carrying everybody else's problems. Every friend calls them when they need something. Every family member expects them to solve every issue. Every person knows they can always say yes because that person hates disappointing others. One day that person finally says, "I can't help you this time." Suddenly, people become offended. Why? Because they weren't necessarily attached to the person. They were attached to the access they had to that person. And that's an important distinction. Some people don't miss you. They miss what you did for them. Some people don't miss your presence. They miss your availability. Some people don't miss your heart. They miss the fact that you tolerated behavior nobody else would tolerate. That's why you must learn to stop explaining yourself to people who only understand you when you're useful to them. Your worth does not increase when somebody approves of you, and your worth does not decrease when somebody rejects you. You have to know who you are before you walk into rooms where people have already created opinions about you. Because if you don't know who you are, every opinion will control you. One person says you're amazing and you feel amazing. Another person says you're not good enough and suddenly you question everything. Someone praises you and you're confident. Someone criticizes you and your entire day is ruined. That is emotional dependence on other people's opinions. You cannot build clear throat a peaceful life like that. There will always be somebody who doesn't understand your choices. There will always be somebody who talks about you. There will always be somebody who thinks they know your story better than you do. Let them talk. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to correct every rumor. You don't have to prove your heart to people committed to seeing you negatively. Sometimes the strongest response is to continue living your life. Let your consistency speak. Let your character speak. Let your results speak. Let the peace in your life speak. Because when you constantly explain yourself, you give other people the power to put your life on trial. But when you become comfortable with your decisions, you take that power back. And I'm not telling you to become cold. I'm not telling you to stop caring about people. I'm not telling you to treat everyone badly. I'm telling you to stop sacrificing your peace simply because somebody refuses to understand your boundaries. You can be kind and still say no. You can love people and still create distance. You can forgive someone and still decide they don't deserve the same access to your life. You can wish someone well and still walk away. That's maturity. And one day, you're going to look back and realize that the explanations you were desperately trying to give were never necessary. The people who genuinely cared about you didn't need a 10-minute speech. They simply listened. They respected your feelings. They respected your boundaries. And they gave you room to be human. So from this day forward, be careful about who you explain yourself to. Don't waste your voice trying to convince someone who has already made up their mind. You know your intentions. God knows your heart, and you know the journey you've walked to become the person you are today. You don't need to convince everybody. Sometimes you simply need to stand firm, remain respectful, keep moving forward, and let your life tell the story. Because there comes a moment when you stop saying, "Please understand me," and start saying, "I understand myself," and that is where your power begins. Setting boundaries without feeling guilty is one of the hardest lessons you will ever learn, because many people have been taught to believe that being a good person means always being available, always saying yes, always forgiving immediately, and always putting everybody else before themselves. But listen to me carefully. Having a good heart does not mean giving everyone unlimited access to your life. There is a difference between being kind and being constantly available. There is a difference between helping someone and allowing someone to use you. There's a difference between forgiveness and allowing the same person to hurt you over and over again. And there's a difference between loving people and losing yourself trying to keep them happy. A boundary is not a wall built because you hate someone. Sometimes a boundary is simply a door that you decide you will no longer leave wide open for everybody. Think about your everyday life. Someone keeps calling you late at night with their problems. Every time they call, you listen. You give advice, you stay awake, you comfort them. But when you need someone, they are nowhere to be found. Still, when you finally decide that you need rest and don't answer the phone, guilt starts speaking to you. You think maybe I'm being selfish. No. You are human. You have limits, you have responsibilities, you have your own battles, and you are allowed to say, "I can't talk right now." That sentence does not make you a bad person. It makes you an honest person. Sometimes toxic people train you to feel guilty for having boundaries because they benefited from you having none. The moment you stop doing everything they expect, they may become angry. They may say you've changed. They may tell other people that you don't care anymore. They may try to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself, but don't let guilt force you back into a place where you were constantly exhausted. Remember this: some people will call your boundary disrespectful simply because they were comfortable with your lack of boundaries. You have to become comfortable disappointing people who are comfortable disrespecting you. That's a powerful sentence. Read it again in your mind. You have to become comfortable disappointing people who are comfortable disrespecting you. Because if your entire life is built around making everybody else happy, you will eventually become unhappy with yourself. Imagine a woman who spends every day saying yes. Her friend needs money. Yes. Her family needs her time. Yes. Someone asks her to do something she doesn't have time for. Yes. Someone speaks badly to her. She stays quiet. Someone crosses a line. She forgives without addressing it. Everybody thinks she's strong, but inside she's exhausted. One day she finally says, "No, I can't." And suddenly everybody notices. "What's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? You've changed." But maybe she didn't become worse. Maybe she finally became honest. Maybe she realized that she cannot pour from an empty cup. Maybe she finally understood that God gave her one life and she has to be responsible for how she spends her time, energy, attention. You don't need permission to protect what matters to you. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, you can create distance. If someone constantly insults you, you can end the conversation. If someone manipulates you, you can refuse to participate. If someone keeps taking advantage of your kindness, you can stop giving them opportunities to do it. And you don't have to scream. You don't have to insult them. You don't have to become cruel. You can simply become clear. "I'm not comfortable with that. I can't do that. I need some space. That's not something I'm willing to accept. I understand how you feel, but my decision is still the same." That strength, real strength, doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes strength sounds like a calm voice saying no without an apology. And here's something else you need to understand. You are not responsible for managing somebody else's emotional reaction to your healthy decision. If you say no when they become angry, their anger belongs to them. If you create distance and they become upset, their reaction belongs to them. If you stop participating in drama and they accuse you of changing, you don't have to run back into the drama just to prove that you care. Let people have their feelings. You can respect their feelings without surrendering your boundaries. This is where many people lose themselves. They create a boundary. Somebody gets upset, and immediately they remove the boundary. They say, okay, I'll do it. Then the cycle starts again. The disrespect returns, the exhaustion returns, the frustration returns, and eventually they become angry with themselves because they knew better. Don't keep reopening a door simply because someone complains that it is closed. Your peace matters, your time matters, your energy matters, your future matters, and you have to protect those things. God can place opportunities in your life, but you still have to develop the wisdom to recognize what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every argument deserves a response. Not every person deserves access. Not every problem belongs to you. Not every accusation needs an explanation. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back and say, "This is no longer healthy for me." And don't feel guilty about growing. Don't feel guilty because you finally learned to say no. Don't feel guilty because you no longer answer every call. Don't feel guilty because you stopped allowing people to speak to you however they want. Don't feel guilty because you started choosing peace. The right people may notice your boundaries, but they will respect them. The wrong people will test them. And when they test them, don't give a long speech. Be consistent. Because a boundary without consistency is only a request. If you tell someone, "I won't continue this conversation if you insult me," then when the insults begin, end the conversation. If you say, "I need space," then take the space. If you decide that you won't tolerate being manipulated, don't let guilt manipulate you back into the same situation. Your actions teach people what access to you looks like. And the more consistent you become, the clearer your life becomes. You will begin to notice something beautiful. When you stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace, you start having more energy for the people who genuinely love you. You become more present. You become more focused. You become more confident. You stop walking into every room wondering who might be upset with you. You stop checking your phone every 5 minutes because you're afraid somebody is angry. You stop living in reaction to other people's emotions. And you finally start living from a place of peace. So remember this, a boundary is not rejection. A boundary is self-respect with clarity. You can have a beautiful heart and still have strong boundaries. You can forgive and still create distance. You can love someone and still say no. You can care about people without carrying everything they place on your shoulders. And you can be a good person without allowing people to continuously hurt you. God has given you the wisdom to protect the life you are building. So stop feeling guilty every time you choose peace. Stop apologizing for needing space. Stop explaining why you cannot give what you don't have. Stand firm, stay respectful, stay kind, but understand your value. Because when you finally learn to set boundaries without guilt, you stop teaching people that your kindness has no limits, and you start teaching yourself that your peace is worth protecting. Stop reacting to every provocation and learn to master your emotions. Because one of the greatest forms of power you can develop is the ability to remain calm when somebody is trying to make you lose your peace. Anybody can become angry. Anybody can raise their voice. Anybody can send an emotional message, slam a door, say something hurtful, or react in the heat of the moment. But it takes real strength to look at a situation that is designed to disturb you and say, I will not allow this person to control my emotions. Think about how many times in daily life somebody says something that gets under your skin. Maybe someone at work takes credit for something you did. Maybe a family member makes a disrespectful comment. Maybe someone sends you a message with an attitude and you immediately feel your blood pressure rising. Your first instinct is to respond. You want them to know that you are not weak. You want to defend yourself. You want to say everything you have been holding inside. So you type the message, you write everything, then you read it again. You send it, and 5 minutes later you wish you hadn't. Why? Because you responded from emotion instead of responding from wisdom. Listen to me, you don't have to attend every emotional battle somebody invites you into. Some people know exactly what to say to get a reaction from you. They know your sensitive points. They know what irritates you. They know what makes you defensive. And sometimes they will push those buttons simply because they enjoy watching you react. But the moment you understand this, everything changes. You stop giving people remote control over your emotions. Imagine someone insulting you in front of other people. They expect you to become angry. They expect you to argue. They expect you to defend yourself. But instead, you look at them calmly and say, I'm not going to have this conversation like this. Then you walk away. Do you know how powerful that is? You didn't lose. You won control of yourself, because the goal isn't always to win the argument. Sometimes the real victory is not becoming the person the other person was trying to provoke. There are moments when silence is stronger than 1,000 words. Not because you're afraid, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand that your peace is more valuable than proving a point. And this doesn't mean you should allow people to disrespect you. No, you can stand up for yourself. You can speak clearly. You can defend your boundaries, but you don't have to become emotionally reckless while doing it. There's a difference between responding and reacting. A reaction happens immediately. A response happens intentionally. A reaction says, you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. A response says, you hurt me, but I refuse to become cruel because of what you did. That is emotional maturity. Think about a driver on a busy road. Someone suddenly cuts them off. They have two choices. They can chase the car, honk aggressively, scream, and allow one stranger to ruin their entire day. Or they can take a breath, slow down, and continue toward their destination. The destination didn't change. Only their reaction could change. Your life is the same way. You have somewhere to go. You have goals, you have dreams, you have responsibilities. You have a future that requires your attention. Don't allow somebody else's bad behavior to make you abandon your direction. Sometimes you give a person 5 minutes of your attention, and then you spend the next 5 hours thinking about what they said. They went home, they ate dinner, they slept peacefully, and you're still replaying the conversation in your mind. Why are you allowing somebody who disrespected you once to continue disrespecting you inside your own mind? You have to learn when to release the moment. You cannot control what people say. You cannot control how they behave. You cannot control whether they understand you. But you can control what you do next. That's where your power lives. God has given you the ability to pause. Use it before you answer that message. Pause before you return that phone call while you're angry. Pause before you send that paragraph. Pause. Before you confront someone in the heat of emotion, pause. Give yourself time. Sometimes 10 minutes can save you from 10 months of unnecessary conflict. Sometimes sleeping on a decision can reveal what anger was hiding. Sometimes silence for an hour can give you clarity that shouting for an hour never could. You don't have to answer everything immediately. There is strength in saying, I'll respond when I'm calm. There is wisdom in saying, I need some time to think about this. There is maturity in walking away from an argument and returning when emotions are under control. And don't confuse calmness with weakness. A calm person can be powerful. A quiet person can be powerful. A person who doesn't react impulsively can be incredibly powerful. Because when you control yourself, other people have less power over you. Think about someone who knows exactly how to make you angry. Every time they say something, you explode. Every time they criticize you, you defend yourself. Every time they provoke you, you react. Eventually, they learn that all they have to do is press the right button. But what happens when the button stops working? What happens when they say the same thing and you simply look at them and continue with your day? They lose control over you. That's why some people become frustrated when you become emotionally disciplined. They were used to getting a reaction, now they can't. They were used to you explaining, now you stay calm. They were used to you arguing, now you walk away. They were used to seeing you emotionally exhausted, now you're peaceful. That's growth. And sometimes your greatest response to disrespect is not revenge. It's becoming so emotionally strong that the disrespect no longer determines your behavior. You don't have to prove that you're stronger by becoming louder. You prove your strength by staying in control. You prove your strength by refusing to make decisions when you're angry. You prove your strength by refusing to let somebody else's bitterness become your bitterness. You prove your strength by choosing wisdom when your emotions are demanding revenge. And understand this, mastering your emotions doesn't mean you stop feeling. Feel everything. If you're hurt, acknowledge that you're hurt. If you're angry, acknowledge that you're angry. If you're disappointed, acknowledge that disappointment, but don't let the emotion become your master. You can feel anger without becoming angry at everyone. You can feel hurt without becoming hateful. You can feel disappointed without destroying something valuable. You can feel disrespected without disrespecting yourself by losing control. Your emotions are signals, not commands. They can tell you something is wrong, but they don't have to decide what you do next. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember who you are and where you're going. Take a breath, slow down, think, ask yourself, will responding to this make my life better? If the answer is no, protect your peace. If the conversation needs to happen, have it when you are calm. If a boundary needs to be established, establish it without screaming. Hey, to walk away with dignity. Because the person who can control their emotions cannot easily be controlled by other people. And one day, you'll notice that the things that used to destroy your peace don't have the same power anymore. The insults don't control you. The gossip doesn't control you. The criticism doesn't control you. The provocation doesn't control you. You still notice it. You still understand it, but you don't surrender yourself to it. And that is freedom. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to have the last word. You don't need to prove that you're right every time. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Sometimes the strongest move is to breathe, smile, step back, and keep moving forward. Because your future is too important to be controlled by somebody else's temporary behavior. Protect your peace. Master your emotions and never give another person the power to decide who you become in the heat of the moment. Stop needing approval from toxic people. This is one of the most difficult things to learn because deep inside most of us want to be accepted. We want people to like us. We want our family to understand us. We want our friends to support us. We want the people around us to recognize our effort and appreciate who we are. But the problem begins when your peace depends on whether somebody else approves of you. You start changing yourself just to keep people happy. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay in conversations that make you uncomfortable because you're afraid someone will think you're rude. You hide your dreams because you're afraid somebody will laugh at them. You stop making decisions for yourself because you're constantly wondering what will they say. Listen to me carefully. You cannot build a powerful life while constantly asking other people for permission to become who you were meant to be. There will always be somebody who doesn't understand your choices. There will always be somebody who thinks you should do something differently. There will always be somebody who doesn't believe in your dream. And if you allow every opinion to become your direction, you will spend your entire life walking in circles. Think about something simple from everyday life. Maybe you decide to learn a new skill because you want a better future. You start practicing every day. You are excited. You have a vision for yourself. Then someone says, "Why are you doing that? You probably won't succeed." Suddenly you begin doubting yourself. You were confident 5 minutes ago. Now one person's opinion has changed your entire mood. Why? Because you gave their opinion more authority than your own vision. You have to understand that people often judge your future based on what they can see from their present position. They may not understand what you see because they are not carrying your vision, and that's okay. You don't need everyone to understand. Sometimes you need to quietly continue. Sometimes you need to work without announcing every move. Sometimes you need to build in silence until the results become impossible to ignore. God may place something in your heart that other people cannot see yet. That doesn't mean you have to convince them. Your responsibility is not to make everybody believe in you. Your responsibility is to keep moving. Imagine a person who decides to change their life. They begin waking up earlier. They start learning. They stop wasting time. They become disciplined. They start protecting their peace. Their old friends notice the change and say, "You've become boring. What happens next?" If that person desperately needs approval, they may return to the same habits just to fit in. They go back to staying up late. They go back to wasting hours. They go back to conversations that lead nowhere. They go back to being the version of themselves that everyone was comfortable with. And slowly the dream begins to disappear. Don't let somebody else's comfort become the price of your growth. People may be comfortable with the old you because the old you was predictable. The old you always said yes. The old you always came running. The old you tolerated disrespect. The old you needed everybody's approval. But now you're growing, and growth changes your behavior. You begin choosing your time carefully. You begin protecting your energy. You begin saying no. You begin making decisions without asking everyone what they think. And suddenly people notice. Some will celebrate you. Some will question you. Some will criticize you. And some may even try to pull you backward. But you cannot allow that, because if you spend your life trying to keep everybody happy, you will eventually become a stranger to yourself. There is a difference between listening to wise advice and living for approval. Wise advice can help you grow. Approval addiction can make you afraid to grow. You should listen when someone genuinely cares about you and offers constructive guidance, but you should not surrender your identity because somebody doesn't like your choices. Ask yourself, is this person giving me wisdom, or are they simply giving me their fear? That's a powerful question. Sometimes people discourage you because they don't want to see you fail. But sometimes people discourage you because your courage reminds them of the risks they were afraid to take. You have to learn the difference, and you don't have to argue about it. You can simply keep moving. You don't need to announce, "I'm going to prove you wrong." No, build your life, improve yourself. Stay focused, let your results speak. Because the strongest response to someone who doubts you is not anger, it is growth. You don't have to chase people who don't believe in you. You don't have to beg someone to recognize your value. You don't have to convince somebody that you're worthy. Your value existed before their opinion. Think about a diamond. If someone doesn't recognize its value, does the diamond suddenly become worthless? No. Their inability to recognize the value doesn't change the value. And the same is true for you. Someone can misunderstand you, someone can underestimate you, someone can criticize you, someone can reject you. But none of those things automatically define your worth. You have to know who you are when nobody is clapping. Now that's where real confidence begins. Anyone can feel confident when everyone praises them. The real test comes when nobody understands, when you work hard and nobody notices, when you make the right decision and somebody gets angry, when you choose peace and someone calls you weak, when you choose discipline and people call you boring, when you choose your future over temporary pleasure. That's when you have to remind yourself, I don't need everybody's approval to continue. You can respect people without obeying every opinion they have. You can love people without living your life according to their expectations. You can listen without surrendering your judgment. You can appreciate advice without becoming dependent on approval. And once you learn that, something changes inside you. You walk differently. You speak differently. You make decisions differently. You stop checking everybody's reaction before trusting your own judgment. You stop asking, do they like me? And you start asking, is this right for my life? That question can change everything, because when you stop chasing approval, you become harder to manipulate. Toxic people often use approval as a weapon. They give you attention when you do what they want. They withdraw it when you disagree. They praise you when you obey. They criticize you when you establish boundaries. But when you stop needing their approval, their control begins to disappear. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to expose them. You simply become emotionally independent, and that is powerful. God has not given you a life so that you can spend every day trying to impress people who may never be satisfied. You have a purpose, you have time, you have gifts, you have opportunities. Don't waste them trying to become somebody else's idea of who you should be. There will come a day when you realize that some of the people you were desperately trying to impress were never even thinking about you as much as you thought. You were carrying their opinions around while they were living their own lives. So put those opinions down. Let them go. You don't need to prove everything. You don't need to respond to every criticism. You don't need to explain every dream. You don't need permission to become better. Keep growing, keep learning, keep becoming. And if someone doesn't understand the new version of you, let them take their time. You don't have to shrink yourself so they can feel comfortable. You don't have to dim your progress because somebody else hasn't found theirs. You don't have to stop moving because someone else refuses to believe you're capable. Stand firm, stay humble, stay focused, and remember, your life is too valuable to be controlled by the opinions of people who don't have to live your consequences. When you stop needing their approval, you don't become arrogant, you become free. And when you become free from the need to be accepted by everyone, you finally have the courage to become the person God has been preparing you to be. Let your actions speak louder than your words. There comes a point in your life when you realize that you don't have to announce everything you're going to do. You don't have to tell everybody about your plans. You don't have to defend every decision. You don't have to keep saying, I'm going to change, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to become better while your life remains exactly the same. At some point, you have to stop talking about the person you want to become and start becoming that person, because words can make promises, but actions create evidence. Anybody can say they are going to change. Anybody can say they're going to become successful. Anybody can say they're going to stop tolerating disrespect. Anybody can say they're going to protect their peace. But when your behavior begins to match your words, people notice something different about you. Think about everyday life. Imagine someone who constantly tells everyone, I'm going to start taking my future seriously. They talk about their goals every day. They tell their friends about the business they're going to build. They talk about the skills they're going to learn. They make big announcements, but months pass and nothing changes. Now imagine another person who says almost nothing. They wake up early, they learn a new skill, they work when nobody is watching, they save money, they improve their habits, they stop wasting time. They don't announce every move. After a year, the difference is obvious. The first person has explanations, the second person has results. That's the power of letting your actions speak. You don't need to tell toxic people that you're becoming stronger. Become stronger. You don't need to tell people you're done accepting disrespect. Stop accepting it. You don't need to tell everyone you're focusing on your future. Focus on your future. You don't need to announce that you're changing. Let them notice. Sometimes the most powerful transformation happens quietly. You start responding differently. You stop arguing. You stop chasing. You stop explaining everything. You stop begging people to understand you. You become more disciplined. You become more selective with your time. You become careful about who receives access to your energy. And eventually people realize that something has changed. They may ask, what happened to you? And you don't need to give them a speech. Your life is already answering the question. This is especially important when dealing with toxic people, because toxic people often listen to your words while watching your behavior. If you tell someone, I won't tolerate this anymore, but every time they disrespect you, you remain available. Your words lose their power, but when your actions change, everything changes. Suppose someone repeatedly speaks to you disrespectfully. You tell them several times that you don't appreciate it. They apologize, then do it again. You explain again. They repeat it again. Eventually, you don't need another argument. You simply reduce your access. You stop engaging in unnecessary conversations. You stop giving them opportunities to repeat the same behavior. You don't have to insult them. You don't have to threaten them. You don't have to tell them, I'm going to cut you off. Your actions communicate the boundary. And that's powerful because consistency is more convincing than promises. Think about a person at work who constantly takes advantage of you. Every time there's extra work, they give it to you because they know you'll say yes. You complain about it afterward, but the next time they ask, you still accept. Eventually they learn something, not from what you said, but from what you repeatedly allowed. Now, imagine that you begin handling the situation differently. The next time they try to place their responsibility on you, you calmly say, I won't be able to take that on. No anger, no long explanation, no emotional speech, just clarity. The first time they may be surprised. The second time they may become irritated, but if you remain consistent, they eventually understand that the old version of you is no longer available. That is how actions teach people how to treat you. And sometimes you don't even have to say anything. Your consistency becomes your message. There is something incredibly powerful about becoming quiet and productive. When you stop telling everyone what you're planning, you protect your focus. Because every time you announce a goal, you invite opinions. Someone says it's impossible. Someone says you're wasting your time. Someone tells you that somebody else already tried. Someone laughs. Someone doubts you. And suddenly you're spending more energy defending your dream than building it. You don't need that. Sometimes keep the vision close. Work on it. Improve it. Build it. Let God guide your steps. Then let the results introduce the new version of you. Imagine someone who decides to become healthier. They don't need to announce their new routine to everybody. They simply begin making better choices. Months later, people notice the difference. That's how real change works. It doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives through small decisions repeated every day. One disciplined morning, one difficult no, or 1 hour spent learning instead of scrolling, one moment where you choose silence instead of an argument, one decision to walk away instead of begging someone to respect you. One day becomes a week becomes a month becomes a lifestyle. And eventually your life looks different because your actions changed. That's why you should never underestimate small, consistent actions. You may think nobody notices, but your life is being built in those moments when nobody is watching. And here's something important. Don't change just to make toxic people respect you. Change because you respect yourself. If your entire goal is to make them jealous, prove them wrong, or make them regret losing you, then they still control your emotions. The real victory is different. You improve because you want peace. You become disciplined because you value your future. You become stronger because you refuse to remain trapped in old patterns. You move forward because God has given you another day to build something meaningful. And when your motivation comes from within, other people's reactions become less important. Maybe they notice, maybe they don't, maybe they congratulate you, maybe they criticize you. It doesn't matter. You keep going because your life is not a performance for their approval. Your actions are for your future. So stop trying to convince people that you're changing. Change. Stop telling people that you're strong. Become disciplined. Stop telling people that you have boundaries. Enforce them. Stop telling people that you're focused. Focus. Stop telling people that you're going to build a better life. Build it. There is a different kind of confidence that comes when you know your actions are aligned with your words. You don't have to defend yourself constantly because you know what you're doing. You don't have to chase validation because you can see your own progress. You don't have to argue with doubters because you're too busy working. And eventually the same people who ignored your words may begin noticing your results. But by then, something even more important will have happened. You won't need their recognition anymore. You'll be proud because you kept your promise to yourself. You'll look back and realize that you didn't become stronger by talking about strength. You became stronger by practicing it. You didn't gain peace by demanding it from others. You gained peace by changing what you allowed into your life. You didn't gain respect by begging for it. You gained respect by becoming consistent with your values. So let your life speak. Let your discipline speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your character speak. Let your progress speak. And when people ask what changed, you don't have to explain everything. Sometimes you can simply smile and keep moving. Because when your actions become louder than your words, you no longer have to convince people who you are. They can see it for themselves. There comes a moment when you have to understand that walking away is not weakness. Sometimes walking away is the strongest decision you can make. When disrespect becomes a pattern, when someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries, when every conversation turns into an argument, and when your peace is constantly being disturbed, you have to ask yourself a difficult question. How much longer am I willing to keep sacrificing my peace for someone who refuses to respect me? Because there is a difference between making a mistake and creating a pattern. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody says the wrong thing sometimes. Everybody has moments when emotions get the better of them. If someone makes a mistake, recognizes it, apologizes sincerely, and changes their behavior, that is something worth understanding. But when someone repeatedly hurts you, repeatedly disrespects you, repeatedly manipulates you, repeatedly breaks promises, and then expects you to remain exactly where you are, that's different. At some point, you have to stop listening only to what people say and start watching what they consistently do. Think about everyday life. Imagine you have a friend who constantly makes jokes at your expense. At first, you laugh because you don't want to create tension. Then the jokes become more personal. You tell them that actually hurts me. They laugh and say, relax, I'm only joking. Then they do it again and again and again. Eventually you realize that the problem isn't that they don't know it hurts you. The problem is that they know and continue anyway. That's when you have to make a decision. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to embarrass them. You don't need revenge. You can simply create distance, because walking away from repeated disrespect is not hatred, it is self-respect. Sometimes people think that leaving means you lost. They believe staying proves that you're strong. But listen carefully. Staying in a place that continuously destroys your peace does not automatically make you strong. Sometimes leaving is the evidence that you finally understand your worth. You have to know when enough is enough. There are situations where you can communicate. There are situations where you can forgive. There are situations where you can give someone another opportunity. But there are also situations where the healthiest thing you can do is stop participating. You cannot force somebody to respect you. You cannot force somebody to value you. You cannot force somebody to change. You can only decide what you will continue accepting, and that decision belongs to you. Imagine you're carrying a heavy bag every day. At first you think, I can handle this. You keep carrying it. After a while, your shoulders hurt, your back hurts, you're exhausted. Someone asks you why you're struggling, and you say, because I have to carry this. But do you? Maybe the bag isn't yours anymore. Maybe you've been carrying somebody else's expectations, somebody else's drama, somebody else's anger, somebody else's disrespect, somebody else's problems, and you have convinced yourself that putting the bag down means you're giving up. No. Sometimes putting the bag down means you're finally choosing yourself. God has given you one life. Your time is limited. Your energy is limited. Your attention is limited. You cannot spend all of those things trying to repair people who refuse to take responsibility for their behavior. There is a difference between helping someone and becoming responsible for their chaos. You can care about someone without allowing them to destroy your peace. You can forgive someone without inviting them back into the same position. You can wish someone well without walking beside them. You can love someone from a distance, and sometimes distance is exactly what allows you to heal. Think about a toxic relationship. Not necessarily romantic, but any relationship where you constantly feel drained. Every interaction leaves you questioning yourself. You walk away from conversations feeling guilty. You start believing you're always the problem. You become afraid to speak honestly because you know it will create another argument. Eventually you realize you're no longer being yourself. You're constantly calculating your words. You're constantly monitoring their mood. You're constantly trying to prevent conflict. You're constantly trying to keep them happy. That isn't peace, that's survival. And you deserve more than simply surviving your relationships. You deserve relationships where you can breathe, where you can speak, where you can make mistakes, where your boundaries are respected, where your success isn't treated like a threat, where your happiness doesn't make somebody else angry. And if a person cannot respect those basic things, you don't have to keep giving them unlimited access to your life. Walking away doesn't always mean physically leaving forever. Sometimes walking away means walking away from the argument. Sometimes it means refusing to participate in gossip. Sometimes it means no longer responding to provocative messages. Sometimes it means reducing contact. Sometimes it means saying, this conversation is no longer productive. Sometimes it means choosing silence instead of another explanation. And sometimes, yes, it means completely removing yourself from a situation that has become destructive. Whatever form it takes, the principle remains the same. You are allowed to protect your peace and don't feel guilty about it. There will be people who misunderstand your decision. They may say you're selfish. They may say you've changed. They may say you should forgive and forget. They may tell you that you're overreacting. But they don't have to live inside your mind. They don't feel what you feel. They don't carry the emotional weight you carry. They don't experience every conversation you've experienced. So you have to be careful about allowing outsiders to make decisions about battles they never had to fight. You know what you've experienced. You know how many times you tried. You know how many conversations you had. You know how many chances you gave. You know how many times you hoped things would change. And if after all of that the pattern remains the same, you have to stop expecting a different result from the same behavior. This doesn't mean becoming bitter. Don't allow someone's toxicity to turn your heart hard. Walk away with dignity. Don't leave with revenge in your heart. Leave with peace. Don't spend the next 5 years trying to make them regret losing you. Spend those years becoming someone you are proud to be. That's the difference between revenge and growth. Revenge keeps you connected to the person who hurt you. Growth releases you. When you walk away, don't look back every 5 minutes wondering whether they noticed. Keep going. Build your life. Protect your peace. Improve yourself. Take care of your mind. Take care of your goals. Take care of the people who genuinely love you, and trust that God can guide you into healthier seasons.